Good evening, everyone. My name is Barkha Dutt, and we are here to talk about yet another provocation from the American President Donald Trump. Now, Trump is not exactly known for his tact, and perhaps his bloopers, his provocative, controversial remarks would have very little interest in India except comic relief, were it not for the fact that this is the second time in the US presidential campaign that he's actually said something directly critical about India. This time, the comment was specifically on India's air pollution in the context of a climate change debate with his main challenger, Joe Biden. Now, we all have some sense of what the air looks like these days, particularly if you're in the national capital, then we have all seen these images. But Trump, as usual, displayed an absolute lack of tact by actually using the word filthy for the state of air quality in India. He also cited two other countries, China and Russia, in these comments. Now, the opposition has quickly seized this moment and is saying that it somehow points to a failure of the Howdy Modi bonhomie that has been on display. We will all of us remember the time when Prime Minister Modi traveled to the US, Trump came to India, and it seemed as if America and India were really inching closer together at the level of friendship between these two men. But if we were to step back and look at the import of these comments, are we being oversensitive? Because the fact is, our air is filthy, or is this a larger diplomatic question before us? Let me introduce our very distinguished panel today, one by one. We're joined on the program by Ambassador Vivek Katju. Welcome to the program, sir, a veteran commentator on strategic affairs and, of course, a retired senior diplomat himself. We're joined by Rajat Sethi. Rajat Sethi is an advisor to the Manipur Chief Minister and a supporter, as it were, of the BJP and the right wing and the government. We're also joined by Padma Rao Bhavreen, who's a senior journalist and editor and writer. And it is my pleasure to introduce on the program today Bhavreen Kandhari. Bhavreen Kandhari belongs to a group called Warrior Moms. They're a group of environmentalists, and they're a citizens' initiative that has really been working to shine a light on the issues of pollution, in specific air pollution. I'll start with you, Ambassador Katju, if I may. There's a tendency to dismiss everything that Donald Trump says when he gets tactless, when he tweets in all caps. But when it attacks your country directly, it becomes a bit different. How would you look at what we've heard him actually say?
I, for one, would pay no attention to it. It was made in the context. It was made in the context of a electoral debate. We all know that he at the moment is trailing, and he had to win this debate. Apparently, everyone is saying that he drew it. So that is one context. The second is, as a people, we tend to be hypersensitive, and I think we don't need to be hypersensitive. And the third is that, whether we like it or not, pollution levels in India are very high. At the moment, they are particularly high. And we should pay more attention to getting our pollution levels low, getting a handle on this, instead of focusing on what President Trump has said, even though he could have used a better language, but then that's it. My last point is that nations and senior politicians take positions and on the basis of their interests, whether it's their national interests or their political interests. And therefore, I, for one, have always discounted the importance of personal chemistry in international affairs.
Can I just push you just on one question before I open it up for the panel, Ambassador Katju? You say you would pay no attention to it, but I think between countries, while you're absolutely right, self-interest is the guiding principle. This is the second time that we've heard a kind of tactless comment. Initially, before this, Mr. Trump suggested that India is fudging its COVID data. So, he tends to say all sorts of things and in a language that is not quite presidential. And Prime Minister Modi has invested a lot of sort of capital, as it were, in building this relationship.
I think I made my comment when I said that nations are guided by their interests, and I, for one, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating for myself, my diplomatic experience has taught me that personal chemistry only goes to a certain point. It doesn't guide how nations conduct themselves when it comes to international diplomacy or relations.
Okay. Let me actually now open this up for the rest of the panel. We've also got Shama Mohammed joining us, and we welcome her to the panel as well. What I want to do is, for the benefit of everybody who's with us and for our audience who may have missed this comment, just quickly play out exactly what Donald Trump said. Now, it's important to understand the context. The context was a debate on climate change. The context was the US president explaining why under him, the administration had decided to pull out from the Paris Accord, the Paris talks. And that is the context in which Trump has this to say.
We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally.
Okay, so Trump there paying himself a compliment. Rajat, where would you come in? I mean, it is, you see, it's irritating. It's irritating not because the state of the air pollution in this country is not dire. It's just irritating because Donald Trump has absolutely zero tact. Yet, should we be laughing this away? When I say laughing this away, not the issue of air pollution, but how Trump chooses to express himself? Give me a second. Let me just unmute you. Yeah, go ahead. Rajat, you just have to unmute yourself if you can hear me. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So my sense of this comment and the context behind it was that he was pandering to the Midwest voter base that he has, which is involved in more traditional industries like of mining, coal, iron and steel, etc. And for them, they have been at the, right from the Obama era, those are the people who've been constantly suffering because of job losses, etc. And Trump came in with this promise, even in 2016, that he's going to restore the importance of those industries, even if it pollutes, and he would disregard the equity and the parity which was to be brought out through the Paris Accord in 2015. And clearly, President Donald Trump has its own way of reaching out to his electorate, and we should realize that this was nothing more than an electoral rhetoric. He is trying to gain ground on which is fast depleting. We've seen several surveys coming out, and he is panicking. So what he says at this stage, so close to the election, carries less meaning. Having said that, I believe that nobody in India claims that India is the cleanest country. In fact, the entire momentum that was provided by something like Swachh Bharat acknowledges that fact that India needs to be much more committal to clean air, environmental concerns, etc. This is why India, left aside some of the initial concerns that they had around what cost does it have to pay to be part of those Paris Accord, etc. They ensured that they become a willful, willing partner and a world leader when it comes to its commitments on environment. This is the reason why even the International Solar Alliance came through, and India took a leadership position there. Therefore, the commitment on the environment front has taken primacy. And I believe, barring the political rhetoric, the election rhetoric that Trump had engaged in, I don't see India shying away from the global high table when it comes to environmental questions.
Okay, now we do have the opposition targeting the government on this, and we'll hear from Shama in a moment from now. But Padma, you have covered foreign affairs for decades, right? And I think Ambassador Katju is absolutely correct in actually making the point that nations are not guided by anything but self-interest, whether it's the United States of America or whether it is India. In fact, Mr. Modi built a personal relationship with Barack Obama as well. We seem to have forgotten that in the age of Trump, right? How should India as a country respond to this? Should we respond by being all prickly and bristly and say, how dare the Americans lecture us? Or should we actually say our air is awful. And I'm just going to pull out the data. But, the fact is that as a country, and I've noticed this about many issues, we tend to be argumentative among ourselves, but we get very annoyed if someone from the outside makes the same comment. Give me a second. I'm just unmuting you. Yeah, go ahead.
I completely agree with Ambassador Katju. In fact, I'd like to add something to what he says. He was talking about the context in which this remark was made. And you pointed out the other context was in the context of the Paris Accord. This outrage has been outraging over this or that, or the opposition outraging and pouncing on any opportunity to outrage. This has become a kind of a habit, and we should certainly ignore it. But what it does remind me of, since you spoke of foreign affairs, is, the gentleman from Manipur is absolutely right. India has made commitments, and India has made realistic commitments in pretty much the same way. I see India's stance towards these, the demand to reduce CO2 emissions as pretty much the kind of stance that India adopted in the mid-90s against the CTBT, the Test Ban Treaty, the NPT, that we will not sign, as a matter of principle, sign any international treaty in which we fall short and we're not at an equal, there is no equal and level playing ground. Now, having addressed all those concerns, we have committed to these international requirements, and India is indeed one of the leaders in making those commitments. So the outrage that I see on the social media excuse me, is completely misplaced, and this seems to have, somehow become a habit. However, having said that, yes, absolutely, our air is filthy. It is filthy. It's getting filthier, and and there are people working, for these issues to do something about it. But that is no reason for all of Twitter and all of the opposition and every single social media outlet to explode in, to go ballistic, so to speak.
But let me give a counter argument. I actually agree with you, and I want Shama to come in on this. But Ambassador Katju, the point was made online that had it been Biden who'd made the same comment, the right wing would not have been so accepting. The right wing would, the supporters of the BJP would have said boycott Biden now, in the same way that they tend to feel very angry, for example, about Kamala Harris's views on Kashmir, on 370, right? So I can see Rajat smiling. So I want both of them to react, because I think that sets up the context for what Shama will comment on. Ambassador Katju, had Biden made the same remarks, would we have treated him with the same sort of kid gloves? Would we have treated him with the same sort of, let him say what he wants to?
I would have said the same thing. Look, we've got to look at our objective situation. We can't afford to be sensitive in these matters. After all, if someone is telling us, even if we don't like it, I don't like when someone says that, look, your country, your air is filthy. I don't like it. But the objective fact is that it is filthy and that we need to do something about it. So, as a big, mature country, as an emerging part, our response has to be, yes, we have shortcomings and we will address them. But the larger issue, Barkha, and I think we shouldn't overlook it, is that the West as a whole and the advanced countries' record of how they've handled climate change or environmental issues is pathetic. They've reneged on every promise that they made starting from the 1990s with regard to climate change. The dictum was common but differentiated responsibilities. It was essentially that they are responsible for climate change, the burden is on them, and that they cannot demand of developing countries that they should set aside their poverty alleviation goals and should adopt measures which would curtail their development. That was the basic premise on which climate change negotiations began, and that was the solemn commitment made by all these countries, that they would help in mitigation, they would help in adaptation, that they would pass on financial resources and technologies. And systematically, if you see, from the 1990s to 2020, every goal they have reneged on. And so Trump, it's all right for Trump to stand up and say your air is filthy, and China and Russia and India and all, but he should look within. What has he said? He said, I'm not bothered about others, I'm bothered about myself. So That is something that on a philosophical level, we've got to focus on, not to say that we will, that we are sensitive and we jump up and down. We are a mature country. We can't behave immaturely. We are a power to reckon with, and we must behave like that. The political class must behave like this and not make everything, get everything to be refracted from the prism of domestic politics.
Okay, let me quickly take this to Shama now, who's been waiting a while. Sorry, Shama, we lost you earlier. So let me just bring you in. Do you think that the Congress should be politicizing something like this? Because the fact of the matter is that A, countries are guided by self-interest. B, when it comes to foreign policies, countries should typically have a united response. Yet we've seen the Congress jumping kind of all over this issue by Trump, whereas Trump is often treated not even taken seriously by many people in his own country.
Barkha, let me come to that. I've been waiting. Now, the most important thing here is the relationship between Trump and Mr. Modi. We had 100 crores for 3 hours in 100 crores in 3 hours in February for Namaste Trump. Then Mr. Modi went there and it was Howdy Modi. Okay, now in Namaste Trump, what is the other important thing is, we did this, we delayed our COVID response. We delayed our lockdown because of Namaste Trump. Let's not forget about it. And we spent 100 crores. They're supposed to have this big bonhomie. And, if Mr. Trump had a problem with our air, I agree with Mr. Ambassador Katju was saying, is that he has come to India many times. His embassy, the American embassy is here. Definitely talk to Mr. Modi in the bilateral meetings. You have to do something about pollution. That is what a friend would say, but not come on stage on a debate and say, there is filthy air in India. That is so, I felt very insulted by the way the remark is made to Indians and with the bonhomie Trump had with Mr. Modi. And Rajat Sethi comes out and says, he was talking to his white voters. Yes, you can talk to your white voters, but you don't insult India out there when you had such friendship. This is called diplomatic failure. And I will start with, give me some few seconds. I will start with 2015, the flight to Pakistan, and to visit on a whim, to visit Nawaz Sharif for his granddaughter's wedding and his birthday. What did we get in January? Pathankot. And what happened after Pathankot? We called the investigators for the first time in the history of India, calling investigators from Pakistan to investigate the perpetrator of the crime.
What does that have to do with this debate?
No, I'm just telling you what is the relationship, how Modi's diplomacy is. It's very important in this. Then China, they were sitting on the swing in 2014 and you had Chumar. And after all this 18 times they've met, what did we get now? Galvan Valley, what happened in China has backstabbed us. They got inside. So this shows Mr. Modi keeps going out there hugging people. That is not diplomacy. Diplomacy is what Manmohan Singh got with the India nuclear deal. How Mr. Bush made Congress to change things to pass the nuclear deal. That is called diplomacy. That is called relationship. This is very important, Barkha, in this context. Okay. In this context is his relationship.
You see it, or
that we have been insulted. We have been insulted on a national stage, on a debate, saying, India's air is filthy. If he was a friend of, and he also said that, the COVID response in India was very bad in another debate. So what I'm trying to say is that Modi showed that he's so close to Mr. Trump that he did this. We've never done a Namaste Trump or a Namaste Obama for that matter. Is that, you roll out 100 crores, you forget your COVID response when the first case came on January 30th, you should have done the lockdown much earlier, but you wanted to welcome Mr. Trump. You show to the Indian that you have such a good relationship. And what we get is him insulting us by saying, your air is filthy. Yes, there is a problem. I understand. You understand. All of us sitting here know that there's a problem. But Rajat Sethi's explanation that it was to the white voters, I will not agree. And like you mentioned, if Biden had said this today, they would be out there attacking Biden. I'm telling you that. So when they have to...
So can I now interrupt you to get Rajat to briefly respond, and then I want to hear a citizen's perspective on this conversation as well. Rajat, do go ahead. I think what's happening here is Frankly, had the Congress been in power and the BJP been in opposition, you would have seen much the same. This is classic politics. In fact, I was talking to an environmentalist and she said, even when Trump makes the comment, it's all politics. When the Congress and BJP argue about it, it's all politics, right? So everybody can separate the politics from the substance of the debate. And to be fair to the Congress, the BJP would have probably said exactly the same. Were the roles reversed, or had Biden, Rajat, you didn't take that the last time, had Biden dared to make a similar comment?
So, okay, barring the rant that we heard for the past couple of minutes, let me just highlight the important aspect of the current
Panelist has to
current
speak
discussion.
about another panelist. No. He can't say rant. This is not done.
Please carry on. Yeah, it was rant, ma'am. Let the audience decide.
No,
You cannot decide that.
It
was rant.
Shama, he will respond to you. Just be calm. Let's have a real conversation.
No, but he can't say rant on a debate.
He's not saying anything about. Okay. He doesn't agree with
the rant. He can say, I don't agree with
call it a rant. You can have me on the TV show or not.
But I'm sorry.
It was a rant.
I'm not.
Shama, let's take the point and move on.
Let us not get too partisan, Shama Mohammed. Let us not get too partisan in our discussion. Even in our simple discussions where every Indian converges on. I mean, there keep certain issues where there is broad agreement.
I'm going to have to mute mics, but I'm not on, I've left television debates way behind. I say that every day. I try and do this in a real, substantive, deep way. So my request is, Shama, just let Rajat speak on the issues you've raised and you can respond on the issues that he rebuts with. Rajat, please get to the issue of the point that she made. Go ahead.
See, it's important that we as Indians, leave this constant temperament of taking every discussion to a political plank. Not everything is political. There are issues where we Indians converge on. We converge on the issue that, yes, the stubble burning, in spite of years and years of warnings from the Supreme Court, from the central government, from the state government, it is still happening. Those are the areas where we should all come together. You have a Congress government in Punjab, for God's sake. What is the government doing over there? So, I mean, see, I don't want to get into a political tutu meme here. It doesn't lead us to anywhere. And certainly from a common citizen standpoint, it won't result in any solutions coming out. Now, coming to the important question of Biden versus Trump. Now, let me tell you one thing. The only issue, first of all, BJP and any of the senior leaders that I have spoken to do not have an ideological investment in Trump by a long shot. Okay, that is clear. But what needs to be understood is that certain hardcore left liberals in the democratic regime, and there are a few, we know, Congresswoman Pramila Jayakumar, she makes certain very irresponsible statements on Kashmir, at least from an Indian standpoint, and no Indian across political parties can accept those things. And this is where a slight divergence comes in. And clearly, Biden and Kamala Harris, when they occupy the chair, they understand the sensitivities that India carries around Kashmir. And they are not going to, come out and utter those same words that Kamala has been doing. So clearly, as I said, this is a relationship where mutual interests are now fast converging. And any kind of issues which are holding us back should not become an ideological touch point for both the regimes, be it the Modi regime here or the US.
There is a complex point, Rajat, that you're making. And that point is that somehow we can ignore the American politics around air pollution, but we can't ignore it the same way around national security. Is that distinction acceptable? I will take that to the panel, but I think what's important to do at this point is actually to look at the data on air pollution. We've got to step back and do a reality check on ourselves, right? And this is from a recent report which looked at the state of global air, and India Spend then further collated it. And these numbers are actually completely shocking, especially when you look at how this has in fact impacted children. I was really shocked at these numbers, and I'll bring in Bhavreen Kandhari to talk about this in a moment, but let's take a look at the numbers. This is what it looks like. In 2019, 116,000 Indian infants died from air pollution. 116,000. I mean, that number is just unimaginable. One infant died every 5 minutes from air pollution, right? So this is the state of global air 2020. You can look it up. It's available on the internet, further collated by India Spend. 1.67 million Indians died in 2019 from air pollution causes. And if you look at the next slide, and I was really staggered, as I said, by the impact on children. Exposure to air pollution also increases the risk of premature births and underweight babies, right? So that number of 116,000 children dying, I mean, and 1.67 million Indians dying, that is just shocking. And frankly, I don't give a toss about whether it's Trump telling me that or Arvind Kejriwal telling me that. Those numbers, Bhavreen, as you have been working on, are just true. And maybe we need to forget the noise that will be, the sad part is if Trump hadn't said it, maybe we wouldn't even be having this conversation about air pollution. That's the really pathetic part about even all of us in the media. Bhavreen, take that.
Absolutely, Barkha. I guess goosebumps every time, these figures or anything we are saying. I mean, everybody's children, all our children are going to live, anybody who's living in Delhi is going to live 10.2 years lesser than anyone else in another city. So this is extremely worrying. And, of course, what he said like, Ambassador Sir said, that, we are guilty as charged, and we are, of course, it's not, we cannot deny that's the truth, and we are, suffering. It's a terrible, terrible situation. It's not filthy, it's poison. We are poisoning, we are breathing poison, we are giving poison to our children. So, but of course, I wish, like Shama, and how angry we are. I wish our politicians will get as angry, and they'll want to, reply or answer, Trump in a way that we correct ourselves, and we, maybe in a year when we speak again, we have a better, as a citizen, as a mother, this is what I wish for. For me, it's even looking like an opportunity, like you said, Barkha, we are talking about it. So, I mean, 2014, I remember sitting, on a panel and somebody saying that, oh, you have nothing else to do because the water is dirty and food is dirty. So you want to pretend like air is dirty. I mean, imagine if we had taken this seriously then, we would not be here. So also, as a citizen, I just feel that, this should be of course, it's more than a wake-up call. Wake-up calls have been happening, there's so much happening, there's no need for that. But, somewhere we are all angry and we want to, reply. But at the same time, of course, I would love PM Modi to tell Mr. Trump that it's you, it's all of you that who have created. You are the largest waste generators, and you are dumping that waste into our country and other,
emerging
countries. Every American is, creating 8,000 times more carbon footprint than any Indian. So he, we cannot point fingers at us, but yes, if it is, then let's work towards it, and let's work, because that's what we are here for. We are trying to save our children's future.
Thank you for that. I think that's very passionately and authentically spoken. And what I'm going to do is, I'm seeing a lot of hands go up, but I'll go to Padma first, then Shama, then Ambassador Katju, and then Shama. And Padma, I think that this is kind of complicated because some things can be true, but we don't think that it's the business of other nations, right? So let's draw a parallel, for example, from Obama's visit to India. And I remember before he flew from India to the United States of America, he, in one of his closing lectures, spoke about Article 25. He spoke of the Indian Constitution. He spoke about religious diversity, all of that. And, while many people may have said, oh, we agree with everything he said, he flew from here to Saudi Arabia. So the point then became like, this is completely hypocritical of the Americans to lecture us. So here too, I think that we need to separate the strands of the debate. There is the core truth of his point, and then there is the point over whether he has any business saying it. And that's where Shama Mohammed is saying, tell him where to get off.
Well, Barkha, again, I have to hark back to Ambassador Katju, because he is the absolute expert in diplomacy amidst us right now. And, all nations are going to do and say what suits them according to their immediate needs and, requirements. So he was in the context of an electoral debate. He said this because he wanted to prove a point about why the United States withdrew from the Paris Accord. So he made that remark. Now, just to come back very quickly to what our colleague from the Congress party said. I'm trying very hard. I can understand that the opposition will want to grab this and make it, an issue. But I really fail to see the connection between how many millions of dollars or rupees were spent on a Howdy Modi program, or how, what happened in the aftermath of the overtures that the Prime Minister made to Pakistan. I don't see the connection between what President Trump said at the electoral debate and these issues. Having said that, again, if there is a just to quickly finish, if the thinking amidst people who are criticizing this remark, by the way, is also to perhaps influence the US American voter, I think that, again, I'll have to hark back to Ambassador Katju. Even the citizen is not going to vote just because, the US Indian voter is not going to now change his mind about Trump just because of what he said about India's pollution. If they were so concerned, they wouldn't have left India in the first place, I feel. But the point is that everybody is out to look at their own interests. And, we're talking about pollution, like the other lady said, rightfully mentioned all these figures. Now, we're talking about, there are hundreds of other things other than CO2 emissions alone. We also have to act as citizens. We can't expect the government to be, providing all the solutions. What are we doing? Why are so many SUVs, diesel SUVs being sold? Why has the court orders been stayed repeatedly, against banning these vehicles? Why? Because there are so many players involved, and we are the end consumers. Why do we continue to buy these vehicles? Why are we not, turning more and more to other modes of transport, for instance? So the citizen is very much responsible. Thanks.
So I know Bhavreen's wanting to come in. Bhavreen, I'll come back to you. I want Ambassador Katju to respond to everything he's heard. Shama and Rajat to come in on the politics of what we're saying play out, and then you to bring in your citizen's voice. Ambassador Katju, I want you to separate the strands of the conversation for us. There is the American hypocrisy. There is the Western hypocrisy. There is shifting the blame of climate change. This is why it doesn't matter which government is there in India. Those negotiations on climate change have been very, very ferociously contested by any government, by every government in India, right? So there is all of that. But there is, I think, if that is legitimate politics, Trump and Biden, then are the Congress BJP politics playing out on this also the desi form of legitimate politics? Do you agree that it would have been exactly the same were the roles reversed?
Look, Barkha, I'm not in the politics business or commenting on politics generally, but I do, my experience shows that politicians will play politics. They are in that game, and that game will go on. But there are some issues on which, as a citizen, I expect the political class to come together. And environment is one of those issues. I would have dearly liked to see that that someone, it could be the government, it could be the opposition party, take the lead to convene a meeting at senior political levels on how to handle crop burning, for example. It is not something which is Punjab has a Congress government. Our friend who's the advisor to the Manipur government has said it's correct. Punjab has a Congress government. After all, they have an interest in ensuring that that crop burning does not take place, and the BJP is in control of the center. So I would have thought that this is an opportune moment for them to come together at very senior levels and to put their heads together and to decide on how to handle this, to see that this is effectively minimized. So play politics, but on this, please come together. Second, as far as climate change is concerned, I think the Prime Minister has taken a forward-looking view, where he has said that whoever may have been responsible, and we shouldn't forget reminding the West of their track record on climate change and their reneging on their commitments. But at the same time, I think the Prime Minister has taken the view that whatever may be the causes, the fact is that India is one of those countries, and my friends who are here can correct me if I'm wrong, but India is one of those countries that will be very, very severely impacted with climate change. It's going to make a great impact on our lives. So I would think that while we remind the West of whatever mistakes they've been making, they're reneging, but at the same time that we take steps, all steps that are humanly possible,
Right.
to try to control it. And in that, the government and the citizenry, I think the point made was absolutely right. The government and the citizenry has to play its part.
Yeah.
Because we are in this boat, we all sink or swim together.
That is correct. I mean, I have developed asthma living in the capital, which I never had for all of my life, and I think that might be true for almost everybody. Sir, you wanted to add something before I go to
I
Shama?
just you said you developed asthma. 2 days ago, my wife, when we woke up, my wife told me, "Let's leave Delhi. Let's go somewhere else."
No, that's the point. That is how.
You were saying that this, I can't bear it anymore.
Yeah, it is that serious. Shama, I do want to bring you in, and I think the question is this. It's not that any of us liked what Trump said, right? It's not that any of us liked the way he said it. We were uncomfortable being reminded of it, and that point is fair. And there is the point about Western hypocrisy is also fair. But then shouldn't we, at this point, as Indians, be saying, Trump, buzz off, but here's the issue on pollution. Why have you made this about Modi instead of making it about Trump?
Barkha, what I want to say is now, I want to reply back to each one of you, please, because Rajat has said certain things which I want to reply to. Sure. He said, we do not have, that is the Bharatiya Janata Party, I expect, or whichever party he supports, is no ideological investment in Trump. Then why did Mr. Modi go to America in the Howdy Trump event and say to the Indians, this is the next president of, vote, indirectly telling them to vote for him? So you don't do that. Nobody ever has done that in India. No former prime ministers have done that. You don't go to there and tell the people what to do. Now, Ms. Padma, please don't keep moving your head. If you are a supporter of Mr. Modi, come out and say you're a spokesjournalist of that particular party. Now, she said that, so definitely there is an ideological investment. Then she says, what has got the money got to do with what he said? See, there is something called, maybe you don't understand, called diplomacy, which has been done by even Prime Minister Vajpayee. Not just prime ministers from my party, but Prime Minister Vajpayee and the other prime minister. There's a way. There's something called self-respect, and you don't just go and hug people and just meet them many times. That is not diplomacy. This was a one-man diplomacy happening. The bureaucrats were kept at the side. So of course, putting 100 crores for 3 hours was a lot of money. And when we had this COVID issue, it should have been cancelled. And we should have gone with the COVID protocol and put a lockdown much earlier. We should have done that. And we have suffered for that. But we did not do it. Of course, it's important. And it is to show that, we have very good friendship with Mr. Trump. So that is what climate change for me and this pollution is horrible. The other madam who was sitting there said, of course, I'm very passionate about it. I have 2 children. And as a spokesperson, national spokesperson, I should live in Delhi, but I live in Pune because I refuse to move at this point of time with my children. And yes, I agree that we should go on a war footing on this, just like the Chinese president had done before. What I would like is Prime Minister Modi or the environmental minister. Yes, I agree we have a burning of stubble in Punjab, and I'm not going to disagree on that. But call these chief ministers, call Mr. Yogi Adityanath, call the Haryana Mr. Khattar, call Amrinder Singh, get together and say, what is the issue? Let's sit together. Because what I understand, it's issue of finance. Let me finish, Barkha. Is that these machines which are required for cutting those stubbles, but that's why they burn it, because they need to put the new crop, has to be provided. So the center should take the initiative, the prime minister, and say, what, we need to get rid of this right now. We need to stop this horrible pollution in our capital city, which is hazardous. Get together and let's not do politics. I agree on that. But on this particular issue, it is political because a friend, somebody who Mr. Modi thought is very close to him, has already said that the COVID thing is not right in India. The response was bad. Then he comes out and says, he's the American president and not less than that. Then he comes out and said the air in India is filthy. Of course, it's an insult. Like I said, he could have just spoken to Mr. Modi, picked up the phone. Many times they've met. And no. But one more very important point is
quickly now.
We in the Congress Party are passionate. We want to, I want personally to see an end to this pollution. I want all of us, and not to play partisan politics on this. But the issue here is the way Mr. Modi has been doing diplomacy and what we have got back in return. And that
Okay,
is what we have seen.
Now,
You can nod your
now
head
you
100
had a
times,
long,
Ms. Padma.
you have made a very detailed argument. Sorry.
Nobody has a right to say I go on a rant. Nobody has a right on your channel. You are the one who's the moderator. There is nobody. If he doesn't like something, he says I disagree on it, but he cannot call it a rant.
Okay.
And that's
Okay. Now we settled that earlier. We settled that earlier. Let me now just get responses. You mentioned Padma a few times. Now, Shama, I have muted you. I've muted everybody but the person who speaks so that there's no crosstalk. I try and do that on this program and we can all hear each other. It's the same principle for everybody. Padma, please, you react, then Rajat, and then I want to go to Bhavreen, who's been waiting very patiently, saying, when will this political bickering end and somebody will actually talk about the substance of the matter? Padma, go ahead.
Yeah, certainly. Personally, I don't really mind what Ms. Shama thinks about my political credentials or whom I voted for or what I believe in. There are millions of people who voted for the BJP, which is what propelled them to power. So I don't think that's a crime to vote in this country so far. Having said that, she doesn't know enough about my work and, my neutrality and all that. So let's leave that aside. This point still remains that each and every point made by the opposition, in this case, Ms. Shama, has nothing to do, not a single one of those points has anything to do with the core of your discussion, which is what President Trump said during a US electoral debate last night in the United States of America, miles away from home. It has nothing to do, unless Ms. Shama is trying to say that it is because Prime Minister Modi...
He's calling it, let me intercede on Shama's behalf, Padma. Let me intercede on Shama's behalf. I think the argument that the opposition is making is that it is a kind of unraveling of the Howdy Modi moment, that Mr. Modi did seem to almost endorse Donald Trump on that stage in America. That's the point that she's making. And therefore, it's an embarrassment both for the country and for Modi's investment in the Trump relationship. Now, please respond to Rajat can also add to that.
Fair enough that they see, that the Congress sees she sees the Modi-Trump relationship as being a wasted relationship, in the sense that he picked the wrong person to choose as his buddy or, as his partner. But the whole point is that it still has nothing to do with the fact that President Trump was elected in his own country and that he made a remark which we all find unsavory. I mean, there is simply no connection between the two. And, I think also I'd like to point out to Ms. Shama that if she felt insulted by the use of the word rant, then I certainly feel insulted at the, doubting my political credentials or even my professional credentials.
Let's all be much thicker skinned than this. I think we're all getting insulted far too easily, including by Donald Trump. Like, I really don't care about what Donald Trump says, but I think there is some legitimate question, Rajat, in saying, did Mr. Modi invest too much in the Trump relationship? Was that Howdy Modi extravaganza really necessary? Was it really necessary to have Trump in India, so sort of close to COVID having broken out in other parts of the world, which we knew about? I think those are legitimate questions for the opposition to ask, because after all, even Biden is questioning Trump about his handling of the COVID pandemic. So to that extent, in that framework, the Congress does have a right to question the BJP about, was that Trump extravaganza so wise, with the benefit of retrospect, and the way he's heaping insults on India?
Barkha ji, Congress is a laughing stock. Okay, let us not give credence to it the way Trump doesn't get much of a credence among the intelligentsia in US. Point number one. Number two, Prime Minister Modi has a way of conducting international relations and diplomacy. He goes out and reaches out on a personal level. It is not just with Trump, it is with the other world leaders as well. How he treats and goes and has a personal bonhomie with the Saudi prince also, for that matter. The way he tweeted around when the Kuwaiti prince died, the passionate tweet that came out from Prime Minister Modi. Look at the relationship that he has forged with the French President Macron as well. Look at how he engages with the German Chancellor when she came into Bangalore, and he hosted and then sent a big delegation to Hamburg for a similar exchange. See, he has a style, a very personalized style of diplomacy. Congress can go to the voters and say that, no, this is not the style. Our Sharm el-Sheikh kind of a style of diplomacy is much better for us. And then the public will decide which course of action is better for the nation. And ultimate deciders are the public. Therefore, for every single statement that President Trump has made for Prime Minister Modi, let me just quote one of them. This is around the time before he was coming that we have met. This is President Trump speaking about Prime Minister Modi. That we have met a few times, and every time he has been the same warm, friendly, energetic, and accessible. I admire him and also his sense of leadership and passion.
But he said that, and then he said this. He's not exactly stable.
No, he didn't. First of all, he didn't say anything about the Indo-US relationship.
Right.
Please understand, he was making a statement in a deeply embedded context. He was making a statement because of the battering that he has been receiving for the Paris Accord and his steps or lack of steps on the environmental front. So please, it is common sense. And of course, we can't expect the Congress to show any kind of common sense, but common people, the citizens of this country, see through it. They know exactly what Trump is saying, what context he's saying, what the relationship between Trump and
you're saying the people will eventually decide. And actually, in both countries, the people will eventually decide whether it's the United States of America or whether it is, in fact, India. The people and their vote, in a way, has the last word on this. Whether that's fortunate or unfortunate on issues like climate change, I don't know. Because I think some issues should be beyond politics, beyond electoral politics. Shama, 30 seconds interjection because Bhavreen has been waiting. Yeah, go ahead.
Just 30 seconds, because I also need to go for another debate.
Yeah.
Now, what I want to tell Rajat is that he says, there are lovely words. I understand that. They are beautiful words from all over the world because they know that by praising Trump, they can get their deals done, just like how Jassault deal was done with France. So he says that, Mr. Trump has written all these love. Then why did he remove the H-1B1 visa? I mean, that was never done. Our special status in export. Why did he do that? So a lot of things has been done. So what is it? Why do we develop? I mean, Ambassador Katju is here. We develop relationships. Every nation is selfish because we want something out. But what do we get by putting his image up? You're the best. You're wonderful. Is that diplomacy? And you call us foolish? Of course, I must say that the Bharatiya Janata Party is foolish because if somebody says you are the best, and do you get anything out? What did we get from Trump in this 4 years? Can you tell me one thing? We got the India nuclear US deal from Mr. Manmohan Singh got from Mr. Bush. What did we get? What did we get from, so what I'm trying to say, Barkha, he can keep calling us foolish, but diplomacy is not about somebody. They all know that what Modi likes is praising him. His image is very important. That's why when they got into Galwan Valley, China got, and he said, nobody entered this land and no army post has been taken. China is using it every day to say that we did not get into India. That was, and what about the 20 of them martyred? Now, today's speech, he said they were Bihari martyrs in Pulwama. And here, he's also dividing the defense military, which has always been one irrespective of religion or which state you come from. He's dividing them also. He's calling there are martyrs from Bihar.
But are we debating?
Is that right, Barkha?
You have every right as an opposition. No. I'm saying there are many different debates. I know, but you've combined many different issues in your... Okay, so you're saying Mr. Modi has been guided.
Diplomacy and his image. That's what I'm talking about.
I have taken your point. Your point is that the Prime Minister...
in that context.
Got it. That the Prime Minister, according to the Congress representative, is guided more by the need for him to be the center of the story.
Yes.
Yeah, got it. And we'll have the panel react to that. But I just want to give a chance to Bhavreen, who therefore should not think that everything went into the background about what we're really here to talk about, which is the accuracy or the truth of Prime Minister, I beg your pardon, President Trump's comments. So I'm just going to actually have a look at these numbers again. 116,000 Indian infants that just keep staying with me. Bhavreen, go ahead with everything you've heard so far. Just one second, Bhavreen. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Just 20 seconds. I'll also take that. All this anger needs to be, translated into, action to curb pollution now. I mean, everything we are doing, we are talking the same. It's like I've been saying, it's like a soap opera. Every year, it's the same thing happening. We are coming, and the years are going by. You've seen these little children who've lost lives. But our own children, every child here is breathing poison. We cannot let this happen. Let this be, we are angry. We feel insulted. Okay, let's take this and, put it all in action. Now, not in terms of smog towers and the ridiculous tree transplantation and the nonsensical traumas, but in the real action of policy change where, like you said, vehicles, we need to, curb all these diesel SUVs. We need to bring a fantastic public transport system. Where are the buses in Delhi? Why are we not segregating waste? Well, the waste management bylaws are 2016 are all in shambles. things like that, that there are so many of them, the thermal power plant norms, we talk earlier, but now we are debating about them, but it really didn't happen. So it's not going to work if we are not going to take serious action throughout the year. If we're going to be making central vistas, those kind of construction projects, huge projects, it's not going to help us. So let us take this as an insult. All the politicians, the politicians, because we are just citizens. We can talk, we can cry, and we can feel bad about our children. But it's them who...
Thank you, Bhavreen. Now I have to take last comments. I'll start with you, Padma. Everybody has 30 seconds. We have a few minutes left, and there are a few of you. So please do make your closing comments brief, and then we can close the program. Padma, go ahead.
Yeah. I think this is addressed to Rajat. I don't think the BJP is particularly, you rattled off, Rajat, all the various achievements in inverted commas of the Prime Minister. Now, the thing is that I don't think, that is the issue. The pollution is the issue on hand. And I completely agree with Bhavreen. To that extent, neither the Congress nor the BJP the Congress has no business to talk. It ruled this country for ages and ages and ages. And all this pollution, even the situation on the China border didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen just under the BJP. Having said that, neither the Congress nor the BJP, unfortunately, time has shown us time and again that politicians will always set different priorities, and for no single party has pollution or the elimination of pollution from India been a priority. Neither has it for the citizenry of this country. So I think it's not just the political part, but this political party or that political party, but all political parties and citizens have to attack
and
this.
And to that extent, I do wish it becomes a voting issue, because when things become a voting issue, politicians tend to take it a lot more seriously, and it actually gets mainstream. Shama, your closing comments, please, if you can keep them brief, because I'm running on the clock here, and we'll give the same time to everyone.
My thing is, in the last point, I agree with Ms. Padma on that it has to be on a war footing. And I believe that, see, what happens in our country, we have a lot of laws. What is the main issue is enforcement of the laws, strict, stringent fines. Now, she talked about the SUVs. Yes, but if you're allowed to buy the SUVs, why don't we make it very stringent that one house has one car? There has to be enforcement of laws. I've noticed one thing in India. I've not been in politics for a very long time. I don't have a family in politics. But we do not regulate. We ban. I believe regulation is very important. I believe enforcement of the law is very important. And I believe we should be on war footing. I, in the opposition, will help the Prime Minister or the Bharatiya Janata Party if it comes to environment. We will follow everything. Let the Prime Minister take it up on a war footing on this. Very important. It's an imperative.
I think that's a fair enough comment. This is a time when Chief Minister should be meeting with the Prime Minister. Rajat, wouldn't you agree? Closing comments? Give me a second.
No.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
When it comes to the issues of environment, it ails from the classic tragedy of commons. And this is where rules and regulations have, over a long course of time, not resulted into meaningful advancement on the ground. And we have seen last year itself, Supreme Court had to intervene, and Chief Secretary level discussions happened between the states of Haryana, Punjab, and Delhi, as well as I think UP. But still, no solutions came out of it. So there is something deeper and more structural in nature, which is going wrong with us, completely lacking in the kind of resolve that we should have seen, which is now a pretty much identified problem of stubble burning. It is stubble burning which carries a predominant impact on air quality around the time of October, November, and it is a settled thing. Just that what we haven't been able to address.
Also vehicular pollution.
So those things are there. Those are around the year. And this is where I think the Environment Minister, Mr. Javadekar, also brought in statistics as to how much contribution is coming on an average around the year. But during the months of October and November, when we see all of this haze around us, it is predominantly because of one cause, which is stubble burning. And it is the single cause which we have failed to address structurally. We have failed to address even when there is commitment from the Supreme Court, from the central government, from the state governments as well, and across party lines, be it the Congress or the BJP. But somehow, I don't know why, what kind of experts we need, where all the expertise has to come out, even if it is from some environmentalists or even certain technology level intervention. We need to think about it. I know that ICAR and few other research bodies of the government of India have been trying to come out with alternative innovations wherein you don't have to burn the stubble, but it can be managed effectively. but none of them have resulted in any scalable solutions which can solve this problem. So I don't know. I mean, if even if we all resolve and all the governments sit, we will be able to address this issue. This has to come through solid innovation. Entrepreneurs have to start putting their minds together to address this problem. This problem will come from dedicated innovators and entrepreneurs of this nation, not from the governments.
Well, I don't know. Some might say that is the government disassociating from responsibility. I think everyone has their part. Ambassador Katju, your last word, sir.
Look, I do not believe that structural problems are incapable of being addressed by the kind of expertise that this nation possesses. I think, yes, of course, there are structural issues, but we can break down those structural issues into economic issues, into agricultural issues, and social issues, economic issues, and we have the capacity to address them, provided there is sufficient political will in the political class as a whole, and there is unity in the political class to address. I'm afraid the political class cannot take the view that this is something which is inherent and we can't address it. If that is the decision, if that is the approach taken by the political class, then I'm filled with dismay and sadness. I will end with that. I hope I'm getting my friend wrong. But certainly, if the political class doesn't take the lead in addressing structural issues, who else would?
I was also a little bothered, Rajat, by your comment on how this is not for governments, this is for citizens.
No.
This is for
what
experts.
I'm saying is that the expertise does not lie with the politicians.
No,
I agree.
The politicians of the day, even if they sit in a huddle, what are they going to discuss? They know exactly what the problem is. They try. Sir, please.
Please, let me just conclude. The politicians have all the expertise available nationally and internationally. Are we to believe that as a country, we cannot address the problem of stubble burning? If that is a given, then I have lost hope. I mean, after all, the political class has all this.
I'll consider it as my mistake that I'm not able to explain what I'm trying to at least intend here. My point is that politicians can at least empower innovators, can finance it, can fund it. Those things can happen. That is where I think the resolve and the overall commitment can come in from the politicians. But today, we have seen how 3 or 4 solutions of ICR, which sound pretty reasonable, that these stubbles can actually be converted into fertilizers and that can stay in the ground, or within a period of 40-45 days, it can be converted into fertilizers. Those kind of solutions are there. But clearly, those solutions haven't been disseminated. I don't know for what reasons.
I would just say, Rajat, that politicians lack expertise, but it is incumbent upon politicians to draw that expertise into governance. That is what governments are about, right? So I think we can all agree on that we're not saying that Amrinder Singh or Nitish Kumar, Yogi Adityanath understand necessarily the science of, what percentage of air pollution is driven by what, but it's their job to get those experts in a non-politicized way. Padma, 10 seconds, and then I'm going to give the last word actually to Bhavreen on this program today, if it's okay with everybody. Yes, quickly.
Very quickly to Rajat. You said, this is the time to talk. No, this is the time to act. The time to talk is all over now. There is no more time to talk. This is the time to act. And the other point I wanted to make is, where we don't have expertise, we have always been masters at getting that expertise. Think of the French jets that we just bought, for instance. Thank you.
Okay, Rajat, do you want to have a 10-seconder there?
I agree with you. I'm not saying this is a talking point anymore. We have to act, but action has to be on solutions. And this is where people, be it entrepreneurs or whosoever, have to see economic opportunity there, and the government should come out, conduct hackathons, do things that they do it. Now which is within the realm of the powers of the political class, which is sitting in power either in Punjab or in center. That is where they need to identify solutions and then allow it to go on scale and address the issue.
Fair enough.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm out of time. Let Bhavreen take the last word on this. Bhavreen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Barkha. And of course, everybody, all my esteemed panelists have been saying, but like Shama said, enforcement. And Rajat, of course, what you're saying, it's of course, similar. But the point is that it's a policy change and the strategy which can be taken care only by the politicians and the policymakers. We cannot come and do anything in that. So stubble burning, actually, in the larger picture, it's a policy change. It's a crop change that is needed desperately. There were decisions taken that were wrong, and they need to be, revoked, and the Monsanto law and all that. It all. But so we cannot do anything in that. We can just, speak here. So if the policies change, then things happen, and then enforcement. After that, so that's the whole success rate.
Okay.
And Shama's not here, and I wanted to just say one thing to her about that. That 100 crore of all that beautifying the city and making walls. It doesn't help if you want to hide slums and hide the filth. It shows. So this PR doesn't work. It's going to be genuine work and genuine, statistics, and what we see around that is going to work in the end.
So I just. Yeah, and I just want to say in the end that Donald Trump is so not the point, but maybe he finally got air pollution to be the lead story on the news today. So maybe we inadvertently all owe him thanks for that, and that is more the pity. So thank you to our panel, and leaving our audience today with these numbers again. In 2019, 116,000 Indian infants died from air pollution. Right? Think of babies. These are small babies that we're talking about. One infant died every 5 minutes from air pollution. I mean, just let these numbers sink in. Why are we not talking about this? Why is this not our lead story every single day? 1.67 million Indians died in 2019 from air pollution linked causes, right? So these numbers are really very, very, very grave. And I think that's the point that Bhavreen has been trying to make. Exposure to air pollution increases the risk of premature birth. So we're going to leave you with those numbers to chew over. And like we said, it would be great if Trump took a backseat in this conversation and air pollution took the first row. Thank you, Bhavreen, Padma, Ambassador Vivek, and earlier to Shama. And thank you to our audience. Very engaged live stream. We did try and pick up some of the best comments. We'll see you tomorrow again with another very interesting curated conversation on the big story of the day. Thank you very much.